Hi, I'm Abby, and I'm just going to make a short video today just to talk about an experience I had when I was younger. And the reason I want to talk about this, and I've actually talked about it in other videos, but for whatever reason they were in videos that I never uploaded, or videos that were on here for a short time, and then I just didn't feel right about it, so I just deleted the video. And I don't actually have, I've tried to share this story, but it has not come to fruition yet. So it is today. And I'm telling you this story because it's literally about, the moral of the story is literally that you aren't going to know what the future holds or what is going to happen unless you try to do something differently. I just feel like I'm thinking about this all the time as, watching my behaviors, and, sometimes when you get stagnant or not really motivated in life, you have to ask yourself, well, how do I create motivation? You literally have to make changes and then do it differently so that you can inspire some new string of energy to hit you and to alter your thinking and to alter your movements and motions and routine, and so you start doing it differently. You have to try to start doing it differently. So this memory is comes from when I was 3 or 4, and I have really old memory. I have memories back to when I was a baby. People would tell me that's crazy, that's insane, but I really quite recall being outside of my body when I was a newborn and seeing the world around me, seeing my parents, seeing my sister. And it's very brief, but it was extremely I was in a human consciousness, but I was a spirit, and I had feelings that were sort of related to what a child would feel. There's my parents, there's my sister, and the feeling is love, and the feeling is curiosity, and the feeling is an exploration of who and what I am, even as a baby. And so this memory is, I literally was, I couldn't tell you the exact age, but it would be something like 3 or 4. And at that time, we lived in the basement of our grandparents' house, and our grandparents had a very large house, and it was on a hill, and it was surrounded by a forest on one side, and then it had a cemetery on the other side, and it was a very large plot of land. And so going kind of out a ways, then he had a pool, and we had a lot of pool parties in the summer, and it was always family over. And and so anyways, a child, that was very welcomed for me to go outside and play, and I often was sort of exploring the forest and the woods, and that was not unusual, and that was the only place that I wanted to be all the time, was in the woods. And I mean, I was not afraid to explore insects and talk to trees and explore all the plant life and examine it. I mean, kids have this crazy way of just they do not get distracted. When their focus is on, they are seeing everything in its tiniest microscopic detail. They are absorbing, inhaling, experiencing, understanding things in such a profound way that human beings, once we get to an adult stage, we sort of suppress that type of patience and timelessness, and instead we're just sort of pushing our way through life, just like the river is flowing, and you just go with the tide. But as a kid, you just have this sensation of timelessness, and there's nowhere to go and nothing to do but to do whatever it is that you're inspired to do at that exact moment. And so I mean, I had this as a child. Every child has killed insects before out of curiosity. I mean, that's pretty normal, I think. And so I learned about insects too based on these interactions. You don't understand death in the same way as you do when you get older. You don't understand it. And so the story is actually about one day when it was sort of on one side of the house, and it was Daddy Longlegs super hangout. So there's lots and lots of daddy long legs in this area, and that's very exciting for a young kid to see hordes of these like completely, they have absolutely no defense against you. And they're the oddest looking, they're spiders, but they're not normal looking spiders, and they're so defenseless, and you seem to know this. And I mean, so anyway, this is the story. So on this day, I went over and was just curious about all these daddy long leg spiders. So I sat down and it just started examining them like a child does. You examine their legs and how they're like, just like you draw with a pencil a line. Their legs are like a line. And then they have these little tiny round bodies, and they do have like a pattern on them. And then they have these two little hooks for, and just, they just do. I don't know how the structure of their mouth is, but they have hooks there. And they're just odd looking bugs. And they're spiders. So anyway, naturally, what do you do with the daddy long leg spider at age 3? You pull their legs off. So I was just so fascinated, so into my little child mind and exploring them. And I started doing that. So I just started pulling off a leg and seeing how they would move. And just pull off another leg and see how they would interact with that experience. And I was literally torturing them and destroying them without knowing or understanding that is what I was doing. So as I'm continuing to take apart their bodies, so now I'm looking at daddy long leg without any legs. Let's see how he moves. Daddy long leg with 3 legs. Let's see how he moves. This is what a child does. A child tries to comprehend its environment in this way. And then that's when the strange thing happened. I felt, which was like a really loud sound, like somebody clapping their hands like right inside of your ears, so loud. And there was no sound at all, but this was the sensation of the experience. And there was like a supercharged energy that I felt, and it was absolutely terrifying to me because I could feel it, I sensed it, and all I thought was nature spirit sees me, and I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble now. And it literally was like Mother Nature. It was a spirit of nature that came, and in that moment of the sound and the fear of the nature spirit, seeing what I obviously must have known then I was being bad, and there was this freak out moment that took place, and for what would have been an instantaneous thing, but it felt like a really long span of time, I was experiencing what I was doing, and I was seeing from the eyes of the daddy long leg spiders how I had destroyed their world. And as a child, suddenly seeing myself without arms or legs or not being able to move and feeling like I am now the daddy long leg spider, I was absolutely terrified. I suddenly in that instant knew exactly what I was doing, and I understood how terrible that it was. And I was so embarrassed and so ashamed, and so just I couldn't go back in time. I couldn't put the legs back on them. So I was just so overwhelmed by this whole thing that I stood up, I smashed all the daddy long legs, and I just ran away. And I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't hide from this. I knew I could not hide from the eyes of the spirit. And there was no, it was just like, I was so ashamed. I felt so terrible. And ever since then, that memory has always stayed with me. Ever since then, I've always, it changed me to such a degree that I have always had this sort of compassion for other people's suffering because of that memory. It was that ingrained into my blood and my emotions and my mind. I mean, I remember that memory so distinctly. And the reason I'm telling you this is that that memory would not be so ingrained into me and my behavior and my sort of love or compassion for others if I wouldn't have pulled the daddy long leg spider. I would not have pulled their legs off. If I wouldn't have done that on that day and had that experience, it wouldn't have altered me in the same way. I actually did a bad thing, and I learned from it, and actually changed and became a loving, compassionate person from that experience. I get it. It's just a child. It's just daddy long leg spiders, but it's more than that. It's creation. It is interacting with creation and damaging and hurting it in a very torturous way. I know that they're just daddy long leg spiders, but those spiders actually possess souls too, and those spiders are actually experiencing their own form of what is reality, what is creation, from the experience of being a daddy long leg spider. We don't see that animals are alive with souls, even that souls inhabit and the animals too. Every squirrel you see, every bird you see, every dog, every cat, every animal, every insect, every ant, every bumblebee, everything has a soul exploring that conscious awareness. Everything is alive with a soul, and we don't see it that way. And if I wouldn't have done that, I would not have had this awareness. And the whole purpose of telling you this story is to give you an idea of I mean, it's for a lot of reasons. It's simply to share a story that had an impact on my life, so you can see me as a child and how I interacted with the spirit world and how I interacted with nature and how that altered me. It's very important for children to be outside. It's very important for children to be taught by nature spirits. It was very important. Children need to have this relationship with nature, and it's being defiled by television and computers, and it's not healthy, it's not good. It is altering what is the natural behavior. The natural behavior is actually to hear the wind and to touch the earth and to interact with the bugs and do all of these things. But kids today aren't receiving that type of medicine, that type of experience, and so their behaviors are altering. And it is just part of the cycle of life. It is just a generation of that is new and different. And I think there's a lot of us who are concerned about the younger generations not getting what we got as kids, because we could just go outside and play, and that was what was expected of us. And now it's a different sort of experience now. It's not the same. You don't see kids just having that sort of freedom anymore. It's kind of crazy because I was watching like the Christmas Story, because I mean we're only in January, so I was like obviously catching up on all my Christmas movies last month. But you have these like little kids, like 7 or 8 or whatever, walking around downtown by themselves, like on their own, like their parents are off doing whatever, and they're just like out exploring downtown, and there's plenty of other kids out doing the exact same thing, and there's no like parental guidance at all. But this was that is a reflection of what was normal in that day and age, that it was okay for kids to kind of be more on their own at a very young age without constant parental supervision. It's different now. But but I'm telling you this story too because I'm always thinking about, well, what are ways that I can do it differently? And even sometimes when we do something that isn't maybe the best choice or whatever, that actually helps us to see things in even more expanded awareness. There's a reason why you made the choice you made. There's a reason why you chose that route, and now you have an expanded awareness, so you need to be proud of yourself for that. I should not have felt ashamed, or I should have actually, I mean, I did. I did feel ashamed. I felt terrible. I knew what the pain was, that I had, the suffering I inflicted. I mean, that shows that I'm like a caring, compassionate person. But that just definitely stuck with me. Anyway, it's just a short video. I guess you can just take whatever you want from it. Let me just see if there's anything the spirit world wants to share at all. They're pretty intense right now. Sort of telling me, there's like really insisting on me focusing on healing a lot of things right now. And they're saying that is not, that is actually something we all need to be focusing on, because we've all sort of like, a lot of, it's not an unknown thing. It's not this isn't some surprise or anything, but human beings have been very challenged, especially in the last like 5 years or whatever, as we're going through these cycles, and the energy that's been impacting the earth has been so strong and so intense. It's sort of constantly keeping us motivated to keep moving forward. It's very hard for us, and that for them to show me how I need to really focus on healing myself And they're saying that we all need to, each and every one of us, focus on doing this, because we've each and every one of us have our own unique experience of challenge and suffering, that we need to literally give ourselves a hug for it. They're even showing me the sort of shameful way that experience had impacted me. Like, they're saying even then I deserve a hug, because they're well aware of how that traumatized me, and it was necessary that I had that lesson and that I learned that, and so that I too in that moment deserved a hug for choosing to allow Spirit to show me something differently that would be so intense and so hard for me to digest that I would feel so much shame from it. So they're really showing me what is a lot of green energy and a lot of healing energy, and they're really pushing a lot of healing energy right now. And they're telling me too that, so I've had this sort of, I've taken notice of some energy shifts, and the energy shifts have been a little challenging, sort of inspiring us to go a little more inward and be in sort of a thought-provoked, like really thinking about our lives and our choices, and thinking about our next steps and our next directions. And this is extremely, every single cycle of energy is extremely important, and this is a very big part of January. And really to override overdoing the thinking. Don't overdo the thinking. Really focus on just, when you see that you have thought it through enough, just turn the mind off and go do something different, and focus on doing things that are healing for you. Find a way to just turn the mind off and go outside and take a walk, or even for 10 minutes or something short like that. They're saying that fresh air and being in nature is really good for each and every one of us right now. Even though it is January and it's colder outside, they're really pushing us to focus on healing right now, and focus on not overdoing the thinking, and being in connection with nature, and allowing nature to heal you and heal me. So let's see if there's any other messages that they have for me. Sometimes the pictures I get is like, what does that have to do with Daddy Longlegs? What does that have to do with healing? What does that have to do with the conversation? It has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation. He said it has everything to do with the conversation. And so I guess the next image they're showing me is literally what is a giant dinosaur. What is a Tyrannosaurus Rex? A sort of a menacing face, and peering in, and there's sort of like a yellow curtain, and it's looking on the other side. Do you see what I mean? What does this have to do with anything I just talked about? That they're telling me it does. They're going to tell me what it means here. Okay, so let me make sure I understand this correctly. Okay, so don't, sort of a lot of messages that I can't understand what are the correct words. It's going to take me a minute to unravel this one, because I'm so confused by what a dinosaur has to do with what I've been talking about. And so the confusion is disrupting the flow of information, so hold on. They're showing me that there's nothing to fear with change. There's nothing to fear. So there's nothing to fear with change, and there's literally nothing to fear. Literally, that our reactions and behaviors are truly based on fears that are that it needs to be a part of the past. Us choosing to fear and stay in whatever state of being we are in, that literally is like a dinosaur that is extinct, and it is an old way of thinking and behaving, and it needs to stay in the past. Yellow has been like a super big color for me lately, and it's really sort of altering the vibration. It helps. If you see a bright yellow color and you see a green menacing dinosaur, what do you really see? You just want to take the yellow curtain and then put it over the dinosaur's face and just see yellow for some reason. And then the dinosaur isn't there, and it doesn't matter. And for some reason the yellow is like warm sunlight from summer, and it's just sort of like a welcoming, like spring. The earth welcomes the sunlight in spring, and everything comes alive again, you know. Yellow sort of makes me feel like it alters my vibration from what feels like the winter sensation into like the spring, and the spring coming alive sensation. And so literally, when you feel fear of change, or fear of whatever you're going through, and fear has so many human emotions that are related to it, and anger is one of them. Pushing, you know, just like internalizing, being afraid of doing it differently and not changing your behaviors because it's just easy to stay in the spot you're in because you're familiar with it. You're not familiar with what's on the other side of the door. They're saying you can use the color yellow, and literally just your fear, just put the yellow, cover it behind the curtain, you know. Fear goes behind the curtain, and now all there is yellow. And embrace the change, embrace the spring, embrace the newness, embrace the awakening, is what they're saying. Don't be afraid whatever change comes. I was not afraid as a child to pull the legs off of the daddy long leg, and then to learn my lesson, which I learned, and it stayed with me for my whole lifetime. I still remember it, and I still feel changed by it. I still feel like I know something more about compassion and nature and living organisms. Doesn't matter if it's in the form of an insect or a spider or a human being or an alien, or a tree or whatever it might be. So that is my message for today. Story and spiritual wisdom, and just a little something, I guess, more to help us through January. So I hope you found this to be worth your while, and thank you for watching.